I was a newer pilot, and quite honestly, I was just looking for reasons to fly and ran across a brochure at an airport. And I will say, when I originally joined Angel Flight, my purpose was probably a little bit selfish. I really wanted to just fly. But a little ways in, and I don't recall, maybe it was a year or maybe two, I don't really recall, but I had two missions that I flew that were very, very close to one another. One mission that I flew up to Montana, and I had a little bit of time before we had to leave, so I went to lunch with the guy I was flying. I took him to lunch. There was a little cafe in the airport, and got a little bit of time to talk to him, and he kind of related his story, and I won't go into the details of his story, but in essence, he had come down with this kidney problem, and through his traveling to Salt Lake for kidney dialysis, he had lost everything. And part of the reason he lost everything is because it took him so long to get down to Salt Lake. It was taking him maybe 4 days every time he had to go for these treatments. And during that 4 days, he ended up losing his job. He ended up losing everything, only to find Angel Flight a little later. And in Angel Flight, he literally could get to Salt Lake in a couple of hours. He could go for his treatment. He could be picked up in the morning and go for his treatment and then be back that day. And it started to kind of click with me, but probably the story that really brought things home for me was about that same time. I remember picking up a mission. It was somewhere in Idaho, and it was a little unusual because there was a 21-year-old man that was listed as the passenger. But I noticed right away, all of the mission reports have the weight of people because you need to know what weight they are. Well, I noticed this was a 21-year-old man, and he was only 75 pounds. But his contact was his mother, and that was a little unusual. So I called her up and both to schedule the mission, and because the airport that they wanted to fly out was a very, very small airport, really small, skinny runway, and there was no approaches into the airport, which means basically that if the weather gets down, the clouds get low, I couldn't get into that airport. So I really, the other reason I wanted to call her is because there was an airport maybe 5 miles from that original airport, and I knew I could get into that airport with no problem. So I called her up and just scheduled the time, and I said, oh, by the way, would it be okay if I picked you up at this other airport that's 5 miles? And she hemmed and hawed for a while, and finally she said, we don't have a car. We lost our car. We've really lost everything. And that's when it really hit me that this was not only an opportunity for me to fly, which I enjoyed, but I was providing real needed service. So needless to say, I told her I would get into that airport. Somehow I would get into that airport, and I did. I remember getting to know that young man, and he had, as I recall, now it's been a few years, but as I recall, he was 21 and had 2 or 3 heart transplants. And that's one of the reasons he was probably 75 pounds. He'd had a really rough life, and he was pretty sick. But as I got to know him, he was just like anybody else. He loved life. He had fun times. He laughed, and he had a great personality underneath kind of that sickness that he was going through. If there are pilots that are new, or maybe even more seasoned pilots like myself, in age I'm talking, who are interested in both flying and have the time and means to do so, that Angel Flight is a great opportunity for them to have an experience of flying, but help people at the same time. As I mentioned a little earlier, I first signed up for Angel Flight just because I wanted to fly a little more. But in the end, it became something much more. For me, probably a third of my flight hours are Angel Flight hours because I really enjoy that. For anybody who might need the services of Angel Flight, the first thing you need to recognize is that it is truly free. People often think, no, there's got to be a catch. There's got to be something that I need to pay, and many of these people who are in these situations have just been beat down by the disease they have and the situations they have, and they almost look at it and say, what can go wrong next? But Angel Flight truly is a free service. Now, there are some qualifications. You actually have to have a recommendation by a doctor. In other words, this is not just a free flight for somebody who wants to go down to Vegas for the weekend. So there is a doctor's kind of a recommendation, if you will. But as long as this is non-emergency service, you can go to angelflightwest.org, and there's a form you can fill out at angelflightwest.org and request a flight.